Happy Wednesday, and thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of the Hump Day Hiatus. I am here with Kristina Bruce, who's joining us from not too far away from me. She's just down the highway in Toronto. And we are going to be diving into some conversation today around healing. So healing our relationship with food and our body, and really looking at redefining what that relationship looks like for us. And a lot of this work that we're diving into comes from our training that both Kristina and I have in body trust through the wonderful peeps at Be Nourished in Portland, Oregon. So Kristina is a certified and integrative life coach. She is also a passionate advocate of the health at every size paradigm. And she's got tons of education in health studies, sociology, yoga, some meditation, and also the work of Byron Katie. She works one-on-one with folks, and I know you do that virtually, and really helps them to start to develop a positive relationship with their body so that they can go on to live empowering and fulfilling lives, no matter what their size is. So welcome, Kristina.
Thank you, Dana.
I'm so excited to have you here with us.
I'm excited to be here with you.
So how about we start off with just if you want to share a little bit with us about what led you to doing the work that you're doing, and from kind of embracing the health at every size paradigm.
Yeah, I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that could be a 45-minute story.
Totally.
But I would say that it came down to just me never, like when I was maybe in teen years and later, like kind of early 20s, I'd say mostly, I just really never felt like my body was good enough. I didn't have like the body that was praised and was seen as the ideal. And I think being somebody who had that perfectionism tendency and like achiever and driven, you kind of I sort of set out in after university wanting to achieve it and do whatever. And to me, I saw that, the body was a big piece of that, it seemed, right? Like if you look at people who are successful or anybody in TV or media, even politicians, it's just it didn't matter. Like people who were successful seemed to have a certain size body. And so, and I wasn't necessarily super conscious of that. It was just really internalized. And so I went out to really achieve that and to experience that for myself and to have this body that growing up I never felt that I really had. And so I really dove into being really hyper focused on food and exercise, and maintained that for a lot of years. It was just it was just kind of a part of what I was doing. I was much younger, I was single, I didn't have my time was my own, so I could spend it however I wanted, and I chose to focus on that. And I noticed that it worked. People they admired my, they thought I got a lot of compliments, and, and so I was like, yeah, this is great. This is exactly what it's all about. It's supposed to be about. But it wasn't until, as I got older and started taking on more things in my life, and was with my my fiance now, and I started realizing it became really clear the time and energy that was required to maintain this body. And I didn't realize how obsessed I had become with it, because it was just me. Actually, I remember I was just talking with Christy Harrison not too long ago, and she used the metaphor of it's like a frog in slowly boiling water. It's like you don't notice that it's getting hotter, as opposed to jumping into boiling water, right? It's just slow rise. And I thought, oh my God, that's exactly how it was for me. And so it kind of came to this point where when my fiance was living with me, and all of a sudden now, I want to spend time with him, and that would cut into like my exercising, or we wanted to eat meals together. And all of a sudden I'd freak out because he'd give me like a little bit more dressing than was allowed for me. And it like, I had no idea how rigid and strict I was around it until I had like hardly any flexibility.
Right.
And he was the opposite. Like, he was the polar opposite. He just like ate whatever he wanted. Me, I didn't really care. And so I didn't realize how rigid it was. And like, and I remember for a while, he wasn't, when he first came here, because he immigrated here, he wasn't working. So it was really nice. I had like a home chef and a cleaner. And awesome. he would make me these dinners. And if it wasn't ready, like right when I came home, I'd lose it. And I didn't know at the time it was because I was starving. Like, right. I was so hungry. And if my food wasn't there right away, like I'd like just scream, like, oh, it was awful. Like, I'd scream at him. And so living with him for like about a year, it really became obvious of how unstable my moods were too. So because I was weighing myself every day at that point, like doubling down on it, he'd be like, I didn't know what, I was just waiting to see what kind of day it would be, because whenever you came out of the bathroom, whatever the scale said dictated if you were happy or upset. Right. It's just like, so it's just like, it became so much, like, it just really became noticeable of how much it was destroying me, and like how unhappy I was, basically because of a number and the size of my body. And my body didn't want to be small. Like, I like to liken it to holding a beach ball underwater. Like, as soon as I let go any give, my weight just shot, like it just immediately jumped up, because I was at a size that my body was not wanting to be at. So, I remember once I started looking online for how to stop emotionally eating, because I thought that was my problem. Right. Because I was just always like wanting to eat. And I came across Isabel Fox and Duke. And I remember looking at it and like, ooh, but she's advocating not to diet. And I was like, I don't think I can do that. That means I'll gain weight. So I just kind of like put it aside. But through that, I started hearing stories of people who were fitness professionals, fitness models, and how they were actually had an eating disorder, and they were deeply unhappy. And I started to really kind of resonate with their stories. And I thought, well, I'm supposed to, like, I was teaching yoga, I was, like in that whole health and wellness world, and thought, but I thought I was doing everything, like this is what I was supposed to be doing too, right? Like, I was, eating all the foods that I was supposed to be eating, but yet I felt so unwell. So, well, see, I said I was going to be short, and it's not. But I'm like, gotta practice this. It's all good. You just start like reliving it again. And I found health at every size. And that was the turning point for me, because it was the science, like up until this point, the science and everything said, oh, fat is bad, fat is the cause of disease. And all of a sudden here was this whole body of research that was like saying, actually, that's not true. Like, there's no evidence of causation. And I was like, what? And so then I just dove headfirst into like anything I could get my hands on that was health at every size related. Then I found out about intuitive eating, and it just kind of went on from there. Like, listen to all the podcasts, just like, totally. Just literally just dove, like, if we consider diet culture like this water that we're swimming in, I like jumped tanks, into another one that was like anti-diet, intuitive eating, health at every size. And at the time too, I was also doing my training as a life coach. I had really done a lot of personal and spiritual work I was really into the work of Byron Katie, and which was all about questioning beliefs And I started to use it to question the beliefs that I had had about my body being bad, about thoughts about what was right or wrong or good or bad about foods and diet and exercise. And like everything just started to unravel, but in a good way. Like this world that I thought was just so, all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, like, so everything that maybe I thought to be true about what made me healthy, I'm actually realizing is not necessarily true. And it kept bringing me back to myself, and it kept bringing me back to my heart and like what was kind to me. And I got to see how much what I was doing was about trying to get external love, approval, and appreciation from other people. It was all about trying to get that validation from outside of myself. And it became to a point where like, if I want to actually live authentic, and if I want to be living from this place instead of this place, then then what I've been doing doesn't work anymore. And so when I just, like, and then I saw it everywhere, right? And then I started becoming so aware and of diet culture and of just everybody around me. I mean, I knew it, like I grew up in it. This was the story of the women in my family. It's the story of people I've been surrounded with. But I was like, oh my gosh, like we're destroying ourselves with, like I just saw so clearly how obsessed we are and how much it's used to like hate ourselves and diminish ourselves by trying to have this body, and through body trust work, realizing like how we've been totally raised to not trust ourselves and not trust our bodies. Absolutely. And so everything shifted at that point. When I became a life coach, I was like, that's it. This is what I'm working on right now, because so many people are struggling. I was struggling, I got myself from like here to maybe here, and I know there's still more to go, and there will be further to go. But that brought me to, it was just so like, I see how everybody is so drawn into it and we don't even know it. So many people don't even know it.
Totally. Well, and I mean, it's like you said, right? When it's the soup that you swim in every single day, and the example, like that analogy of a frog from Christy, I just love, because, when you're essentially born into it, and so you don't know anything different, right? And Christy has just commented here, Christy Facio, that she remembers the days when the chunk of metal measures gravity dictated her entire day, right? And I hear that so often, it'll be the number on a scale, or, someone will glance in the mirror first thing in the morning to do some body checking, or put on their clothes and check their body there at that point in time to see where it's at. And that does, as you said, set the tone for the entire day. So I know you had also mentioned there as well that you found the book Health at Every Size, Isabel Fox and Duke, and kind of dove in and really started to learn about the alternate paradigm that, okay, maybe fat isn't all that we've been told that it is. And I know for myself that education piece was also pivotal in me starting to flip my beliefs and then be able to relate to my body in a different way. And so I'm just curious if, that was kind of like the starting point for you, or if there was something else in that time period as well that kind of really helped to make a significant shift for you that allowed you to really turn away from the way that you'd been doing things your whole entire life and walk this new path.
Yeah, like that was a part of it. And I think it was a culmination. It was my like boyfriend at the time moving in with me and kind of holding up this mirror to what I was actually being like. And not in a negative way. He actually was just such an amazing, like I'm very lucky that I think him being in my life was a huge turning point, because he was just nothing but a source of like unconditional love and just acceptance. And, he saw me, he didn't see a body. And, and so he was there to kind of hold the space for me to go through all of this. And then doing, like I said, this inner work and this sort of spiritual work through my deepening meditation practice, through being like doing a lot of work with the work of Byron Katie, questioning my stressful thoughts, it just kept bringing me back to myself and showing me ways that I was that I did not accept myself in order to try and be accepted by others. And also too, like, it became really hard to live life. Like, it became hard to have a full life if because I got to see how much this was taking up my time, and the emotional instability, like I was just all over the place. I was so up and down. And again, having somebody living with me, I at that point lived on my own for 6 years. And so there was also like putting in that of somebody moving in with me and shaking things up that way. I couldn't like keep it together. And because I was hungry all the time and I didn't know it. I didn't know I was taught to ignore my hunger. I was taught to think that I was doing something good. Like, I was showing willpower and self-control and discipline, all of these, patriarchal values that our culture loves. And I thought that was a good thing, but I couldn't be in relationship with, I wasn't very loving towards my boyfriend at the time. And actually he tells me this later, like 3 years later, that he's like, I don't know if we'd be together still if you had continued that way, because it was becoming really difficult to be around you, because I was just so like, he's like, I just didn't know, like I couldn't speak and I didn't know how you'd react. Like you would just blow up some days. And so it was all of that. It was like kind of being in this, like, thankfully the safe environment with him, where he could hold like just, and because as you know, like it's such a grieving process. Like I went through some deep points of grieving my thin ideal, like the thin ideal, this body that I was losing and everything that had given me. Because it did, like, let's be real, in our society, it gives you external approval and validation. And if you're not giving that to yourself, you seek it outside. And so that's what I had been taught up until that point, and that's what I had craved. So it left me with like, really, I thought, well, this is really my spiritual path. Like, if I'm going to give this up, and if I can't get this now from other people like I used to, I've got to learn to give it to myself.
Yeah.
And that's been how I've continued with this journey. So like I said, it's sort of this culmination of like learning of health at every size, having the relationship to hold up this mirror and realize I just can't do it anymore.
Yeah. And also, I think I'd also like to just kind of draw attention to how countercultural it also is to be able, or to even think about giving those things to ourselves, right? Because not only are we taught to seek them externally, but we're also taught that giving them to ourselves is selfish, right? So it's like a double-edged sword. It's like, here are these standards that, you're supposed to hustle for, and are going to give you worth. And oh, by the way, like, you're actually not allowed to give them to yourself, because then you're selfish, you're inconsiderate, you're greedy, you're gluttonous. And, so there's so much messaging there to unpack. And as you said, right, those beliefs.
It's like, to me, it's a lot about the beliefs that we're taught. Like, and I just keep bringing up the work of Byron Katie, because it was an essential, like, I still use it, but I was really using it a lot at that time. It was such an essential tool for me to learn to come back to myself, to open up that space to do that, to connect with myself, but just to question everything that I had been taught, like any belief that I had, it was really focusing on the beliefs that cause stress. So like anything that caused dis-ease, in the body, and it can be really subtle. But like even the thought, giving love to myself is selfish. Like you just ask, is that true? Like, is that really true? Can I really know that that's true, that that's selfish? And the funny thing, like, as we know, like when you just keep thinking that you have to give and give and give, you deplete yourself and you cannot give anymore. And you're going to lash out at somebody else, or you just, it's hard to like be able to really give to others what you haven't kind of experienced within yourself. And it's not to say, like, I know that there's the idea that you can't really love somebody unless you love yourself. Well, I mean, like, yes and no, because I think sometimes we've been taught that we can open up to other people. Sometimes it's hard to give it to ourselves. So I can see yes and no to that. So I don't buy into that belief like 100% like some people do. But I've also known, like, I do sometimes ask my fiance now to tell me in those moments when I get caught in my thinking, and I might get caught in old diet culture thoughts, and I'll tell him, remind me what it was like before. Remind me what I was like before and how I am now. You know, and so he'll sometimes like remind, like, he's like, when we're talking about love, he's like, you are way more loving to me, but to yourself. You know, and so it reminded me, I was like, yeah. And he's like, Anne, you're just like, you're more stable. Like, you're just happier. And, you know, you have energy. Like I haven't really gotten sick very much since I stopped dieting, because I didn't realize how much I was depleting myself through over exercising and lack of nourishment, even though I was eating all the right things.
Yeah.
You know, and I eat so many bad things now, and I'm great, you know, like, and so that so like, again, questioning that belief, questioning beliefs about food, you know, like questioning beliefs about, is this actually a bad food or not? Like I remember doing the work on like eating potato chips is bad. Is that true?
Right.
And like looking at the difference of, you know, how do I react when I believe that thought? And who would I be sitting here eating these potato chips without that thought? And noticing the difference. And like, one is a lot more stressed, anxiety, if I'm thinking they're bad, judging myself, probably not digesting them well because my stomach is tense now because I'm like, oh, I shouldn't be eating these, to like eating them without the thought because they're enjoyable. Like, what would be my experience? How is that different? Like noticing the taste, like a lot more intuitively eating, probably not eating all of them because I'd be like, oh, I can't have them again or whatever it may be.
Right. So
and just enjoying the experience, like having joy in my life. And then, you know, like in the work, it's like turning the thought around to start looking at different ways that it could be opening up different options. So like, what could you find examples about, like eating potato chips are good? Like, how could that be good? It's like, well, when I look at it, it really is food. Like it is nourishment. It is, you know, calories. It is giving me sustenance, and they're enjoyable. Like it's life. Like I'm enjoying life. I'm connecting with my body. I'm tasting, I'm experiencing salt and, like, you know, whatever kind it might be, crunchiness. It's pleasurable. I'm giving myself a range of experiences. Like, all of a sudden now potato chips are pretty darn good. So like, you know, good or bad, like it's a spectrum, and it's noticing. It came down to me about, I know that chronic stress is not good for me. And in all the different ways I was creating chronic stress in my life through these beliefs about food, my body, and exercise. And now, like, I'm experiencing a lot more ease, a lot more enjoyment, a lot more pleasure in my life by questioning these beliefs about what was good and bad or right or wrong when it comes to food. And I don't believe it anymore, that there is like a good or bad or right or wrong. I believe that it's our own experience, and any thought that brings us stress can be questioned.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I love, I had Anna Chapman on, oh gosh, in December, I think. I feel like time's just going by at warp speed right now. And I love the quote from her. She says, you know, maybe this whole idea that I'm not good enough as I am was a problem with her belief system and not actually a problem with who she was. And
yeah. And that's been my experience.
Yeah.
Like when I question it, that's been my experience. It's like it's a belief system. So much of our ideas and concepts are just ideas and concepts. They're not fact.
Yes.
The only fact that we can ever know, I think, at this time is what is true for us in this moment right now, based on our experience. And I know for me, I'm looking for creating more ease in my life. And that usually means letting go of a lot of things. And that usually means questioning my stressful thoughts and beliefs around, even if I like, I often use like rolls in my stomach because that was always something that was like a fixation for me. Like that would be my body checking thing that I would monitor.
Right.
And I still fall into it to this day. Like that's another piece for me, is working on the body checking aspect. That's a long ingrained habit.
Yeah.
And so looking at like, what are the positive things about it? I just thought, I was thinking this morning, there was that there's this meme or this post going around I saw on Instagram that Sarah shared about what was like in the 1500s, it was a black woman, that was a normal body. And so I was just thinking, looking at myself as I have like fat on my body in places that it didn't exist before, and the rolls on my stomach that weren't there. And I thought, like, wow, like I'm really in a healthy place. And I thought, why would we, like, this was just me like contemplating this morning as I woke up, like, why would we want to try with all of our might to remove from our body something that is so like nourishing and protective? I thought, like, if I got sick tomorrow, like really sick, my body would lose weight likely because I couldn't eat. And that would be a sign of illness. Like when we're healthy, we grow. When we're sick, we deteriorate. And the loss of weight often coincides with that. And so I thought, like, why wouldn't I be acknowledging and feeling really happy and joyful right now about this flourishing body that I have at this moment with this weight on me? That's a sign of health. That's not a sign of ill health. If I got sick tomorrow, thank God for this on my body to help protect me, to give me that. So my body had some weight to lose. What if I was down to like, I had dieted myself down to nothing? Then we're in a much more serious situation.
Yeah.
So exactly. It kind of gives me that buffer. And I was like, I don't know,
I love
contemplating.
that you just used there of this flourishing body.
Yeah. It's beautiful. And we're just taught that it's not. Yeah. It's nothing more than conditioning. It's nothing more than literal brainwashing. And coupled with that experience then of lack of love and that visceral experience of the emotional negativity that we've experienced from peers growing up or from our family, like that's held in us. And that's why we end up growing up thinking that this is bad. It is not a fact that it's bad. It is not a fact that some bodies are more beautiful than others. That is nothing but a belief, and that can be questioned. And when we can question it and we can come into our heart, all of a sudden there's space for everybody, and everything is beautiful, and all bodies are beautiful when we connect from our heart. But our idea that it's not is because we're coming from up here. Mm-hmm. And these are concepts. These are ideas. These are data. That's not truth. In my opinion, the truth comes more in here.
Yeah, that's definitely my experience as well. And something that I found really helpful in my process. I'm not familiar with the work of Byron Katie as you are, but what I used in that questioning place was anytime a judgment arose within me, anywhere I was, I was very hyper aware, and still am, of, oh, there's a judgment. And then I just get curious about it and really break it down, as you said, like, well, is this actually true? Is this true for me? And that was very, very helpful in terms of sort of starting to redefine who I was and what it meant, right? And what my relationship with myself could look like if I was able to detach from all of that external stuff that we've been talking about, all of the rules and the brainwashing and, the approval and expectations. And, what would it feel like to live from a different place, to have motivation come from, as you say, right, our heart instead of our head.
Mm-hmm.
Walk through life from this place of openness and love instead of facts. Facts, I'll say.
And ideas,
And
like
ideas and all this data, right?
it's so rigid. There's not much flexibility there if we're ruled by these thoughts that float in our mind and these ideas of what we should and shouldn't do.
Right. And the all of these things, none of which are based on our experience of our personal bodies and space. Right. And with the body trust work, I love how, it's all about coming back to that. And you've said that quite a few times, right? And coming back to yourself. And for some folks, just learning who that self is, because I know so many of us, and myself included, right? It's kind of like a place of discovery that we enter, because I actually didn't know who I was without all of these rules and all of these ideas that I had kind of plastered on myself.
And it's like we create, these identities that we carry, and I mean the thing is that an identity, however we choose to identify from ourselves, it can always shift. Like these, identities can shift. And so an identity that I had was a health and wellness professional, and that idea of what that looked like. Now I still consider myself a health and wellness professional, but from a very different viewpoint. And I don't want to stop using it, because I would like to bring in this different narrative into that realm. It's one way right now. It's a very particular way of what health and wellness is. And I kind of want to be like, no, I'm still very much about health and wellness, but I just don't subscribe to this way that it's supposed to be now. But in my workplace, I was seen as like the health and wellness person. And I was, I'm still teaching yoga classes, but it came in different fitness classes. And I had this moment where I was like, oh my gosh, if I gain weight, are people still going to see me that way? Are they going to trust me anymore? Are they going to even want to come to my classes because I don't look the part? And when I started going through this shift, I remember saying to myself, I just would love to see more instructors out there with like different size bodies, and yoga teachers with different size bodies. And I really wish that there was more out there like that. And then I was like, well, if not me, then who? Like, what am I waiting for? Like, who else am I waiting to be okay with themselves? So, all right, time for me to do it. Time for me to be in a larger body. And I don't consider myself in a very large body. I'm like kind of in an average body, but comparatively to what is out there a lot, it's larger.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so, just, I wanted to start to shift around what was available to people. And again, like, who am I waiting for? Whose permission am I waiting for? And like, do I need external appreciation or an approval to say, yeah, we're good. We give you the seal of approval now to be teaching fitness.
I know, it's such I have found anyway to be such a toxic place if you don't, fit the current ideals in that culture. And if I think about, health and wellness, to me, like, my definition kind of lives somewhere in the realm of fluidity and really allowing space for my body to change and for me to be able to listen and respond in the ways that are going to be most helpful and most supportive in all moments. And the current paradigm of health and wellness is about ignoring all of those things and subscribing to some sort of external plan that is supposedly going to take you to this, I don't know, golden place of all the things that you ever desired and wanted. Through its prescription, which is not flexible. So typically creates more stress for people, right? Because it doesn't allow time and space for their actual lives to go on.
Yeah.
And have meaningful relationships outside of the one that they've created with this program or this plan.
And when I hear people talk about pursuing their health and wellness goals, and I know this for myself, that's what it was like for me. There's often a lot of stress around it. There's feelings of like, oh, I should be doing this, or I was bad and I didn't do this. And I was like, how is this supposed to make you feel better? When like, I just see a lot of pressure that's being put on themselves, a lot of shaming. And yeah.
And the other thing, I love Lucy Aphramore. A while back, she was on, I believe it was the Dietitians Unplugged podcast with Erin and Glynis, and she talked about how this term that a lot of us were using in the health at every size community, in the body trust community, we were saying health is not a moral imperative, right? So like, you don't, in order to be worthy or in order to be a good person, like you don't have to pursue health, right? And in saying that, effectively, we're still saying that, health is within our control, but it is something that we can pursue, and it completely negates all of the other determinants of health outside of our behaviors and responsibilities, right? Because there's so much that we can't control. We can have all the fucking kale smoothies that we want, that we can jug. And at the end of the day, like, sometimes things are just going to go wrong.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that the most healthy people are the people with the most economical resources says a lot right there. And I remember one of the things that I was really grateful for learning years ago in my health studies program was we learned about the social determinants of health. And that's what we talked about. And we talked about looking at what are the different influences within the environmental makeup of the person that impacts their health. And I remember that was the first time I came across like, oh, so if somebody is in lower income, is making a lower income, they're likely not going to be able to afford a home in an area that they tend to be the lower income housing might be in areas where there's industry. So you might be sitting beside a big smokestack, right? Well, to think that doesn't have some kind of effect. I mean, we all breathe the same air, but proximity to pollutants, environmental pollutants, or proximity to parks and recreation, which is good, in nature, which is good for our well-being, and to good schools and healthcare facilities and recreational facilities. It's like all of these things affect our health. And to just say to them, and because, as we know, like, if you're in a low income environment, you're probably having to work multiple jobs. You're probably working shifts, maybe shift work. Both parents are probably working shift work. So now there's stress around childcare if you have kids. And because of that, you're just doing the very best that you can to get by. And we're all human. We need, sometimes they might go for a distraction. So maybe they smoke. Or maybe they have a drink. And so, all of these different factors end up impacting somebody's health. But instead of our culture looking at this and our society saying, what can we do to better support this person and help lift them up? We just point at them and say, you should stop smoking and you should stop drinking and it's your fault and you need to eat more vegetables, etc. We put it all on the person instead of looking at the different myriad of ways it has impacted their health. It's like, yes, there is personal responsibility. Absolutely, I'm not negating people and their responsibility. And I'm also saying we have to look at the context of what this person's environment is and have some compassion. And if we're not willing to come together and raise everybody up so that we all have like this healthy base to work from, like, don't sit here and tell me that this is going to be somebody's personal responsibility 100%, because it's not. Absolutely. And so we're not looking at apples to apples here, right? Like, you want to talk to me about somebody then who's living in a very affluent area who has all of the resources available to them. That's a very different environment. And I'm not going to sit here and praise this one person for being healthy because they go to yoga classes and drink green smoothies, and this other person who's, you know, smoking and drinking, but they're jobs and struggling to make ends meet with their kids, and maybe their relationships on the rocks, because we know that, you know, poor finances is one of the things that causes problems in relationships. I'm not going to sit here and point fingers at these people and say one's better than the other, because we're not looking at the same thing. Yeah. So it's frustrating, you know. It's an easy way to like not look at the deeper problems that are rooted in our systems and structures. And it's easier for politicians to like say, we're not going to deal with this because, you know, anyways, it go on and on about this, but it's so much more. It's so much more. And I don't say this to like put fear into people, to say like, oh, great, like I'm in this situation and now what do I do? It's more to be like, I say it more to say we have to look at the greater thing. And I'd really love to see people putting their time and resources into helping change this environment for everybody, as opposed to just trying to like sell, you know, kale to people.
Yeah. And
like, let's shift our focus.
Exactly. And I know, you know, given stories and conversations that I've had with folks in larger bodies, and, you know, going to the doctor is not a great experience. Going to the grocery store can be not a great experience. You know, walking down the street can be not a great experience because of our rhetoric that we have in this culture right now around different sized bodies. And same thing applies, right? We shame them, we blame them, it's their own fault. And yet here we are, you know, talking about all of these body image issues and fixes that are out there, which, you know, dieting, exercising, and how, you know, if we're focused on these things, we really don't have much of a life elsewhere. And, you know, what does that do for our health? And, you know, what are the impacts of the shame and the blame and the scrutiny of being in the large have on our health, right? So like, let's get towards what's helpful. We don't know anything about someone based on their size, and really look at these beliefs that we have around larger bodies and fat bodies, and start to unpack that shit.
Oh my gosh.
It's not true.
Yeah. The thing that really I find amazing is like, I can't, you know, they call it healthcare, and so much I'm like, where's the care? Because I can tell you by shaming and blaming somebody, that's not caring. You know, we all know that has a negative impact on our health. And, you know, I was even kind of thinking about my scenario. Like, we also know people, like we know people who've done everything right and they get cancer or drop dead of a heart attack. We also know people who've done everything wrong and they live to be 95. And it goes to show, because what health is so much more than just what we're told that it is. Size, what we put in our body, exercising, like it's sense of like, you know, if you have some good deep relationships with other people, if you have a good relationship with yourself, no matter, you know, what you're doing, that counts for a lot. And, you know, like that's a well-being. Yeah. So there's so much we don't know.
Totally. There was a quote that I came across not too long ago, and I can't remember where it was from or where I read it, but, it said, when I feel excited about life, I can feel alive in my body.
Mm.
And, you know, I think about what gets you excited in life, and can we walk towards that? Can we trust it? Right? Like, can we let go of these rules and these ideas and ask ourselves, what is true for me right now? What gets me excited? And can I do more of that?
Yeah.
So that I can feel more alive in my body, as opposed to carrying out all of the tasks and the chores in my life that I'm told I should do to care for myself. What if we just did the things that we loved to do? Can that be caring for ourselves? Can we do it
I
without
think
guilt and
so.
without shame? Right?
Totally.
Yeah.
I think so. That's what we all want anyways. And we've just been told that the only way we can do these things is if we look a certain way or if we follow
Yeah.
these rules or guidelines.
And if we practice restraint and willpower, it's got to be hard, right? If you want something good at the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, you got to jump through all these hoops to get it. You got to hustle to get it.
And I think we also need to acknowledge too, like it's not easy necessarily. It's not easy. And if somebody is living in a larger body, that's not it may not be easy to just all of a sudden to say, okay, I'm going to stop, because there's this whole narrative too of like the good fatty, right? Like if you're not pursuing weight loss, then so people have to still sit here and deal with the external comments that they're getting. So I'm not, I want to just acknowledge and not say like, this isn't, we're like, oh yeah, just do this. It's all good. Yeah, like just live your life, have fun. Right. So, and I know you're not, but just to bring that up and acknowledge that. And the more that I think that we can do whatever we can to empower ourselves is like, that's, in my opinion, that's my goal. That's the ultimate, is to be living for myself, regardless of what the external messaging and voices are saying, and to continue to do that work and get support however we can.
Mm-hmm. And looking at the broader systems, as you mentioned before, right, and seeing how the fat phobic ideas within those systems, that folks in larger bodies don't have the privilege as those of us in acceptable, passable bodies do, to be able to, walk free of that stigma and those ideas that are still continued to be put on them. And, there's a great place that I actually started when I was doing my body trust training, which was through the implicit bias test on the website, where you do this super quick thing online on their website, and it really you get answers back, and it gives you some information on your bias and that specific scenario. So there's one on racism, there's one on larger bodies, and body size in general, and just what your beliefs are that you hold. And if we can start to address these fat phobic beliefs within ourselves, not only will our lives be richer, but we can enrich the world for everyone to have access to all things as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. For sure.
So I'm conscious of the time, and I'm curious if there's anything else that you would like to share with us before we sign off for the day. Do you have any offerings coming up? I know you have a free body acceptance guide that folks can get on your website. You have a link to that through your Instagram page. Anything else?
Yeah. Aside from the one-on-one coaching that I'm doing right now. So I have a 6-week coaching package that I work with people individually on helping to, again, question all these beliefs that we've been learned about what people have thought about their bodies and food and exercise, so that they can just live more empowered lives, true to themselves. That's the main thing that I'm doing. There will be some stuff. I'm almost finished my body trust trainings will be certified soon. Working towards that. So later this year, I'll start working on some more offerings when I have a bit more time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
for those of you listening or checking out a replay, you can find Kristina on Instagram, KristinaBruce_coach, and also on her website, which I believe is www.KristinaBruce.com.
With a K, Kristina with a K.
No. So thank you so much for joining us today. It's been such a pleasure to chat with you. And I hope that we can do this again sometime.
Yeah, love talking with you, Dana.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your week, everyone. And I will be here next Wednesday flying solo. Just going to have a general Q&A session and kind of talk a little bit more about my journey and how it relates to the body trust core element of the month. Thanks so much. Bye.